I'd actually managed to never have played a Resident Evil game until Resident Evil 8 Village. It's actually my uncle, who's a huge Resident Evil fan, who convinced me to play it. And he also convinced me to play it on hardcore. So this review is definitely going to be based on my experience playing at the hardcore difficulty setting. So let's address that right off the bat. I think it was a fantastic way to play the game, except for a very uneven difficulty spike near the beginning when you have to survive a lichen attack. And that's going to be the footage that I have playing here for a bit. This section was unbelievably challenging. I had to develop what seemed like a perfect route through this, similar to when I used to speedrun games, where you want to design the perfect thing and just iterate. But while there's a certain appeal to this type of gameplay, it's nothing like the experience I had with the rest of the game on hardcore. I died more times in this section than I did for the entire rest of the game combined. Speaking of the rest of the game, I think that the hardcore difficulty setting was fantastic. It pushed me to scrounge for every item I could find because they all felt so useful. I loved that the map would turn blue when you knew a section was clear, so I wouldn't waste my time looking for treasures that weren't there. But I also had fun trying to get everything to turn blue, right? When it was red, and I was like, well, I thought I cleared everything. I really enjoyed this, and by playing at the hardcore difficulty setting, I felt like it really added a sense of value to each item. In a lot of games where the difficulty level is too easy, I find that items become pointless. The looting's pointless. The progression is pointless. Here, every time I got an item, it was either useful as the item itself or to sell in order to upgrade weapons. Speaking of which, upgrading the weapons was also very satisfying. So my favorite element of this game by far was definitely the looting and upgrading of weapons being very satisfying. And again, at that hardcore difficulty setting, I felt like this was definitely accentuated on how enjoyable this element of the game was. Now, moving on to other elements of the game, I thought the graphics were beautiful. I really enjoyed the look of this game, and also I thought it ran very, very well on my gaming PC. I have a good, but by no means brand new top-of-the-line gaming PC. I have an RTX 2070, not super, though it is slightly overclocked, and an i5 9600K. The game's running on an NVMe SSD, and I have 16 gigabytes of RAM. So if you're curious, that's the system. And how did it run? Well, I actually played this game a couple of different ways. I played it originally on the couch with my uncle at 1080p with a controller. And I thought the controller controls were very good, and the game ran at 1080p, completely maxed out, including maxing out ray tracing, and rarely dipped below 60 frames per second in that case. Also, then when I was playing by myself, I was playing on my monitor, which was 1440p ultra wide, and I also did experiment with playing it with normal 1440p. At normal 1440p, it was actually reasonable to play the game completely maxed out with ray tracing, although you will be below 60 frames per second. It depends on how okay you are with being at 45, 50 frames per second in certain scenes. At ultra wide, I thought it was a little bit too low with the ray tracing on, so I did turn the ray tracing off, but it was still actually usable depending again on your tolerance for how far below 60 you're willing to go. So the performance and the graphics that you get for those performance, I thought were fantastic. Overall, the game design was extremely enjoyable. We had very distinct sections of the game with very different atmospheres, different art, different enemies, different boss fights, which kept everything fresh, but you always get to come back through a main hub location with new keys, new items, new things unlocking, so you get to loot through and feel this satisfying sense of progression. Somewhat similar to maybe a Metroidvania game, although nowhere near in that exact style. But the idea of going back through and looting areas again once you've unlocked new features was very enjoyable. Overall, I thought the game was quite good. The storyline, again, as somebody who has not ever played a Resident Evil game before, clearly had things going on that I didn't fully understand the importance of. There was definitely a direct tie-in from Resident Evil 7, which at this point I might go back and play. But I was definitely able to follow the game and enjoy it despite any of the lack of information I went into. But I imagine people who are deeply immersed, like my uncle, for example, who are deeply immersed in this setting and this game series will enjoy the story even more. I enjoyed it enough to read every little note I could find in the game. Some of those even helped pay off a little bit in terms of gameplay. It was a very good setting and story. So overall, setting, story, graphics, performance, overall game design, very good. Again, despite my issue with the initial difficulty spike on hardcore, despite I feel like hardcore being the correct difficulty to fully enjoy the game, other than that one section. Now, I do think that the game has a few weaknesses, a few things that could be improved upon. Overall, I think the boss fights were a little hit or miss for me. I think they could have been improved. Overall, the horror aspect of the game, I didn't really find that scary, which for some people is a good thing, maybe even for me. I'm not all that into horror. But I found that the enemies for me were more a challenge in terms of conserving my ammunition, rather than a challenge in the sense of I'm terrified by these, although there are a few exceptions. A few little jump scares did actually hit me with a bit of an actual fright. Although definitely no nightmares caused by this one. Although the section with the creepy dolls were actually creepy. If anything was actually a little bit scary in the game, I'm gonna call it for that section. So overall, I very much enjoyed the game, was very impressed with the PC port, and I look forward to going back and playing some older Resident Evil games. I might start with 7 or the RE2 remake, and this game has inspired me to do that. Have you guys played the game? What do you think about it? Let me know in the comments section. I was overall quite impressed. Thank you to my subscribers. You guys are beautiful people. Thank you especially to people who hit the join button, financially supporting the channel. That helps me fund like games to buy, products to review, and all of that. It's always appreciated. And as always, I hope that you have an excellent day. Bye-bye. Why did I say bye-bye? That's just dumb.